Welcome everyone to a very special episode of Monsters of the Mind. This franchise is not 20 years old, but holiday season, I want to do something for myself for once. Anyway, since this franchise is a bit more niche than most, I figured I should give an introduction. Since this franchise is a bit more niche than most, I figured I should give an introduction. This is Ben 10. A franchise about a young kid who finds a watch-like device called the Omnitrix that allows him to turn into different alien forms. And those alien forms are what we're going to talk about in this video, because this series has actually a surprising amount of world building for a kid's show. Pretty much every species that we see has its own species name and planet, and some of them even have pretty deep lore. So yeah, this is like the perfect series for this show. It was just the age thing holding me back, since I really didn't want to wait till 2025 to talk about it. Anyway, let's just get into this. But first, I should explain some context. On the top screen will be the species name, on the bottom of the screen will be their planet name, and on the side, it's what the transformation of the alien is called. Alright. Oh, and one other thing to note. In the third series, we were introduced to these things called ultimate aliens. Basically, they're hyper-evolved forms of the aliens, and I'll be highlighting them when we get to them. Okay? Okay. So, without further ado, let's start this thing off by looking at the aliens introduced in the very first series from 2005. Let's go. Pyranites are rocky humanoid creatures covered in flames. They come from the planet star Pyros. I don't know, the creators seem to flip-flop on if it's a star or planet. Anyway, Pyranites have pyrokinesis, as you can probably imagine. They can shoot flames, control flames, shape flames into weapons, or set a piece of earth on fire and levitate on it. But they can actually naturally fly, so They can also control their heat to truly hot levels, with it being sometimes said they can become as hot as a supernova. So you might want to bring some ice. Now, as fire beings, you can imagine they don't do so well around water and other extinguishables. But unlike other pyrokinetics, they're not actually hurt by it. It just makes them unable to use their powers until they can reignite. And since they're made of fire, they tend to burst things into flames they don't mean to. And one last notable thing about them is that when they get sick, they get a literal cold, as in they now shoot ice instead of fire. So that's pretty cool. Oh, that was funny. Don't even bother denying it. Vulpamancers are canine-esque creatures with no eyes. They make up for this blindness thanks to their other senses being enhanced so much that they have a mental map of whatever's around them. And since they basically have sonar, they can see invisible things too. They also possess very sharp claws and teeth, making them dangerous to fight head-on. It's also said they can shoot their quills, but they never do that in the show, so yeah. One notable thing about Vulpamancers is that they can't talk. Well, they do, but their language is considered incomprehensible to anyone who isn't one of them, and as such, translators don't work on them and everyone just hears growling noises when they speak. Because of their enhanced senses, louder than normal sounds are very irritating to them, and when they get sick, they become stuffed up and can't see anymore, since their mental map is mostly based on smell. When ultimized, Vulpamancers can talk and they become covered in spikes. Yeah, we don't see much more of what they can really do. We only see this form twice. Petrosapiens are a crystalline species. They're a super tough bunch, as much like a diamond, they're super dense and hard to break in physical combat. But they're not just good at defending, they're a super strong species in combat, as first off, they can shape their arms into different forms, like making shields capable of deflecting energy, or turning their arms into super sharp blades. And they can also create and control crystals, either by shooting mini shards right from their arm, or creating huge structures. They can even trap you in a crystalline dome. So yeah, very powerful species. But speaking of power, we've actually met their prophet, deity, whatever. He is a Sugalite, a one-of-a-kind species known as a crystal sapien. He has the ability to absorb energy and then fire it back in his own attack, which manifests as a rainbow-colored energy. He can also fly. Now, their home planet Petropia was actually destroyed sometime before the series, but luckily the entire population had been backed up, I guess, to a red crystal that is capable of restoring the planet and reviving everyone who died. Yeah, that was a thing that happened. Anyway, despite their bulk, Petropians are still weak to sonic attacks like high vibrations or very loud noises, which can shatter them. but they're still not a species you want to mess with, as they've kicked some serious butt over the years. Kinocelerans are a raptor-like species. Their main ability is that they can run at super fast speeds. We've never gotten an exact measurement for their top speed, but since they've evolved super speed to dodge the frequent lightning strikes of their planet, and they can move so fast that time around them stops, they're pretty fast. And like any good speedster, they have the reaction and thinking speed to match, and they can stop on a dime, which is always useful for super speed. And they have sharp claws, so they can deliver a hit as well. Also, the species has a visor-like structure they can put over their face, so I guess it's like a form of protection from debris. And I always like when speedsters are given eye protection, since logically, if you're running that fast, there's going to be some sort of debris, so I like when they give them some sort of eye protection. I just think it's a cool detail. The Galvin are a species of frog-like creature that are only a few inches tall, but what they lack in brawn, they make up for in intelligence, as Galvin are among the smartest creatures in the universe. They're great with technology, and they're always inventing things, and their small size can be used to their advantage, as they're harder to get a hold of, and they can squeeze into small spaces. But their size is something that's also something that can't be ignored. They're really not built for combat, at all. They have basically no strength against larger creatures, so yeah, they really emphasize brain over brawn, but that's not a bad thing. They're a highly respected species, and their technological weaponry makes up for their lack of physical strength. And plus, the Omnitrix itself was built by a Galvin, so without them, this series wouldn't have happened in the first place. Also, they have very long lifespans. Also, when they're ultimized, they become weird head creatures with telekinesis, so that's a thing. Tetramans are red humanoid creatures with spiky skin, and their most defining feature, 4 arms, and 4 eyes, but that's not as important. Tetramans are very strong, and thanks to having 4 arms, they can do things like hold you down with 2 arms while beating you up with the other 2, and other such combos. Tetramans are a warrior species. They care very deeply about their strength. In fact, to get married in their society, you have to beat your wife to be in a fight. This is mostly because females are stronger than males, so it's like a test to prove you're worthy to wed them. And unlike other tough guy characters, they're not actually stupid. In fact, their tech is more advanced than ours, and is considered highly valuable since their machinery is built to be super durable. Lepidopterans are an insectoid species. They have 4 large eye stalks, large fly-like wings, and a sharp tail. Lepidopterans' main ability is to shoot a slimy substance from their eye, which can entrap most foes they come across. It's also implied they can change the substance of the slime. Sometimes it's flammable, but other times it can be used to put out fires. But whether this is an actual power or just the writers forgetting something is debatable. I'm leaning towards the latter. They're also pretty strong, as we've seen them carry large amounts of weight without being slowed down, and their tail is said to be super sharp and can pierce right through steel. One thing about them, though, is that they're constantly emitting a fluid to keep their limbs mobile, and this fluid is very stinky, making them pretty unpleasant to be around. But otherwise, yeah, don't mess with the big bugs. Also, in the reboot, they were redesigned to be more humanoid because apparently their original design was considered too scary for kids. Boo. Piscus volans are a fish-like species. They have a lure like an anglerfish and very sharp teeth. In the water, these guys are a force to be reckoned with. They can swim super fast, and their teeth can tear through steel like butter. And just like a snake or eel, they can open their mouths incredibly wide to deliver deadly bites. And in general, they're super strong when in the water. But keyword, in the water. As on land, they become far less useful. Not because they can't move on land, their tail fins become a pair of legs on there, but rather because they need water to breathe, and without water, they suffocate. So a pretty situational species, but when they're in their element, you don't want to mess with them. Galvanic mechamorphs are a technological species created by the Galvin by complete accident. Their body is made up of millions of tiny machines called nanites. They're a blob species capable of morphing their body around. But more importantly, is the fact that they can merge with any electronic device and alter it in some way, like giving it limbs or something. Plus, they can dismantle it if they want to. Outside of their technological merging powers, they can also shoot a beam from their eyes. However, they're not perfect. If the technology they're possessing is self-aware, then the host can fight against the possession. And because they're an electronic species, they're weak to things like electric shocks and EMPs. But still, don't mess with these cybernetic species, guys, whatever. Ectoneurites are ghost-like creatures. Like the ghost of myth, they can become intangible and invisible, and they can possess living beings to make them do their bidding. Also, the form you see on screen is just a secondary skin, as this is the true form. And when in this form, they become even more powerful, with prehensile tentacles coming out of their chest, the ability to shoot beams, and even telekinesis. Also, they're very hard to kill, as even a single strand of their DNA contains their consciousness, allowing them to come back at a later time. But they do have one pretty big and bright weakness: sunlight. When in their true form, they burn to a crisp in direct sunlight, and even bright lights in general can incapacitate them. This is actually the main role of their second skin, as while it weakens their power, it allows them to go out during the daytime. So yeah, you better be afraid of these ghosts. Arburian Pelorotas are a torso-shaped species with the face on the chest. Their main ability is to curl up into an armored ball for defense or movement, as they're pretty unbalanced species that falls over if they try to move too quickly. Now, curling into a ball might not seem like an impressive power, but the thing about them is that their armor is super tough. So if they were to gain momentum in their ball form, they basically become living wrecking balls, capable of shattering nearly everything in their path without even slowing down. In fact, some of the things we've seen them do have been more destructive than aliens whose main power is super strength. Plus, they can survive a fall from the atmosphere without a scratch, so you better be careful around them. Sadly, though, this species is extinct since the planet was sucked dry by an entity known as the Great One, destroying the planet and presumably wiping them off the face of the universe. When ultimized, they gain metallic armor as well as spikes on their body that give them better traction, and of course they can be used as a weapon. So yeah, the roly-poly boys who are super tough if need be. Florana are cycloptic plant-like creatures with tentacles for feet. They have stretchy limbs that can allow them to grab things from a distance. They can control other plants mentally. They have seed pods on their back that can be used as explosives. They can grow thorns from their body, and they can even merge with plants as a form of camouflage. So yeah, they're plants, and they have plant powers. That's pretty cool. Next up, we got spheroids, lizard-like creatures. Not much to say with them, since I'm like 95% sure we don't even see them on screen for 30 seconds. All we know is that they can well up their body fluids and then shoot them out as a high-pressurized blast. But other than that, we don't really have anything else about them. They don't even talk. Nosdinians, also known as megawatts, are battery-like creatures. As you can imagine, they have electrical powers. They can shoot lightning and turn into bolts of electricity to travel through wires. They also have duplication powers, either by absorbing enough energy to do so, or if you cut them in half, both halves will become a new Nosdinian. They can also make loud noises capable of releasing sonic waves. Nosdinians are very mischievous creatures, since as long as they find something entertaining, they don't care who gets hurt, and when there's enough of them, they can become very destructive. Luckily, though, they can't do anything against non-conductive materials like rubber, so you can trap them in rubber things if you want to. Polar Manzardil are iguana-like creatures. They can shoot beams of ice that freeze things. Yeah, that's really all we got from them. Though it is mentioned that there are other Manzardil species, so that's something to note. Makes you wonder what their powers are. Also, in Ultimized, they have a glacier on their back and they can shoot icicles. Yeah, that's cool, I guess. Laboans are a werewolf-like species. Like the werewolves of myth, they have sharp claws and teeth that can be used as a deadly weapon, and they have super strength and agility. Also, their mouth is divided into 4 instead of 2 sections, which allows them to emit powerful supersonic howls. Yeah. Thepkufon are mummy-like creatures. They can extend their bandage-like appendages far out, and according to one tie-in game, they can create sandstorms. Not much else to say there. Transilians are humanoid creatures resembling Frankenstein's monster, including stitch-like marks on their body. Their main characteristic is that they have biomechanical structures on their back capable of generating powerful electrical shocks. They're also super strong and possibly super smart. I don't know. That was said to be one of their things at first, but then it was said that's not an inherent ability, so who knows. Gormans are bipedal lizard-esque creatures. Don't be fooled by their small size. These guys are a force to be reckoned with in combat. Their main power is eating. Sounds lame, right? Well, thanks to their tongues and flexible mouths, they can eat things many times their size. That's not all, as anything they eat becomes a super powerful stomach acid bomb, which they can launch out at their attackers. Gormons have shown they can eat energy too, including a power source said to be on the same level as the sun, and a super dense mechanical core. So yeah, these guys are no joke, and in fact, canonically, they have no predators. Also, you might have noticed that their planet is numbered. That's because it's mentioned that if threatened, then the Gorman population will eat their planet and move to another one. Yes, really. Another notable thing about Gormans is that they have 3 subspecies. There's the Perks, which are solid green in color, and Mercs, which are camo in color, plus the Queen, who has attributes of both variants. So yeah, don't mess with the eating, guys. Splixons are small humanoid creatures resembling some sort of ink blot-like thing. Thanks to binary fission, a Splixon is able to make copies of itself with no limit, and they're all linked, as they always know where each other is. Unfortunately, they have one major drawback. The clones all share damage. So if one gets hurt, everyone gets hurt, and if one dies, they all die. So not the best species in combat, since all an opponent has to do is focus on killing one, and then they all fall down. So yeah, they make clones, but that's not going to help them in the long run. Opticoids are strange humanoid creatures with bat ears on their face. Their most notable characteristic is that they have eyes everywhere, except for their head. This gives them incredible vision, obviously, but their main combat move is that they can shoot lasers from these eyes, and they can even change the type of laser too, as they've been shown shooting ice beams in addition to the typical electric beams. And they can pool all their eye energy together to their center eye to shoot massive lasers far more powerful than usual. But because they are covered in eyes, which are a sensitive part of the body, they're very weak to irritants like spicy things or other things like that. So they're going to need some eye drops. Tokustar are massive humanoid creatures resembling the character of Ultraman. They're not from a planet, rather, they're born during random, unpredictable events known as cosmic storms. Tokustar are some of the most powerful creatures in the universe, as they have been shown to be super strong even against other creatures their size, and they're super durable. And plus, they can shoot beams from their arms that are strong enough to potentially destroy a small planet. And despite their large size, they're super flexible, capable of moving fast and high jumping. So not a creature you'd want to mess with. However, it's been shown that their head fin is pretty sensitive, and hitting it causes massive pain to them. So I guess that's one cheat code. Also, small enough creatures could evade their sight and then sneak into them and, well, use your imagination. When ultimized, Tokustar become even bigger and stronger. But since we only ever see this form once, we don't have much about them, so who knows. Well, that's all the transformations we see in Classic, but there are 5 species who never got a transformation that are of note. First up, Chimera Sugeneris. Okay, technically this one does have a transformation, but only in the reboot, so whatever. Anyway, Chimerans are a humanoid squid-like species. They're super strong and durable, and when in the water, they can transform into a giant squid-like creature that's said to be their true form. Originally, it was claimed they're a warrior species trained for combat from birth, but this was later retconned, as when we got to the planet, they didn't seem all that combat ready. Normally, I don't mention the reboot when I mention the species, since they're usually pretty much the same, but notably, the reboot gave Chimerans some new abilities, like laser eyes and the ability to turn their arms into stretchy tentacles. So yeah, they have more powers in this continuity. Then there's Soterogians, humanoid-esque creatures who are always wearing armor of some sort, so their true appearance is a mystery. The only time we've ever seen one without an armor was an individual who is described as being mutated, so it's unknown what a typical specimen looks like underneath the helmet. A Soterogian's armor gives them all sorts of abilities, like flight, weapons, retractable tentacles, your typical power armor abilities. And they have a small arm on their shoulder, so that's weird. Then there's Osmosians, humanoid creatures, but distinguished from them because they have horns on their head. An Osmosian is like a sponge. They can absorb energy, matter, and DNA, and they can use it to their advantage. When they absorb energy, they can fire it back. They can absorb matter to make armor out of the material they absorbed. And when they're absorbing matter, they can shapeshift their body to create weapons and regenerate lost limbs. And when they absorb DNA, they become a hybrid of the species that they absorbed, though they only gain 1/10 of their strength. But on the plus side, they can absorb multiple DNA sources at once and become freaky chimeras, so that's pretty cool. The main drawback of an Osmosian, however, is that if they absorb too much energy or DNA, they tend to go a bit nuts. Their sanity is something that's very easy for them to lose. Feel like there's something about them I'm forgetting to mention. Didn't one episode drop a major bombshell about them that might be important? Yeah, I can't think of anything. Then we got Uxorites, humanoid lizard creatures with 3 eyes and tentacled heads. They have telekinesis, and we're told they don't practice parental care. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Finally, there's Lenopins, also known as sludge puppies. These slime-like creatures are shapeshifters capable of altering their body to look like pretty much anything. Lenopins have historically been at war with humans, and this was only broken off recently, so there's still a pretty big tension between the two species. So with that, the classic series is over, and we jump 5 years into the future for Alien Force, where we look at the aliens introduced in this series. So let's go. Methanosians are plant-like creatures. They're coated in methane, so they smell exactly like how you think they do. They have the ability to make huge vines to entangle their foes, but more importantly, they can create flames to fire at their enemies. Though it should be noted that unlike Pyronites, Methanosians can't actually control flames, they can only make them. They're also very hard to kill, as they can reattach lost limbs and even grow them back. And this includes their heads, so don't even think they operate on zombie rules. When Methanosians hit puberty, they end up becoming what's known as bloomed. They become more muscular, the head becomes brighter, and they gain a collar. When ultimized, they become more like a tree and they shoot out massive blue flames, which as any chemist will tell you, is hotter than orange flames. Sonorosians are a small silicon-based creature. They're not the most durable species as they break pretty easily, but they make up for this thanks to their 2 powers. Much like the Splixins, they're capable of endless duplication, and unlike Splixins, their clones aren't connected, so one can get hurt and die without affecting the others, and their main offensive ability is to release supersonic screams, which combined with how many of them you can come across at once, can quickly lead to a headache. So not very durable, but they more than make up for it. When ultimized, Sonorosians lose their cloning abilities, but they have a larger, more durable frame, and their cloning is instead replaced by duplicating discs that release sonic waves. Vaxosaurians are a dinosaur-like species. They're very strong and durable, with their main power being that they can change their size, capable of growing up to 60 feet tall. And when they do, their scales become more armored, making them even more durable. And as you can imagine, as they grow, they become even stronger. When ultimized, they gain ankylosaur-like armor and a tail club, and the ability to shoot explosive bone fragments from their hands. So yeah, these guys will make you dinosaur. Aerophibians are manta ray-esque creatures. They have the ability to shoot lasers from both their eyes and their tail, and they can fly at super fast flying and swimming speeds, with them being shown to be capable of even going faster than light. So yeah, these flying fish are very speedy. Necrophrygians are large humanoid moths. First off, they can fly, as you can imagine, and they have frosty breath, capable of freezing whatever they want. In addition, they can turn intangible, and when they phase through things, they can freeze them from the inside out. You might think that as an ice-based species, they'd be weak to heat, but you're dead wrong, as they can survive extreme temperatures on both ends of the spectrum. In fact, they can straight up drink molten iron with no consequences. Speaking of, necrophrygians have a metallic diet, eating anything made of the stuff. And most interestingly, they're an asexual species. Every 80 years, they lay a clutch of eggs, whereupon the babies hatch and fly into space to feed on star radiation. When ultimized, necrophrygians gain icy flames that allow them to flash freeze things. So yeah, very cool species. Cerebrocrustaceans are a crab-like species. They have large brains, and as such, they're very intelligent, being considered second only to the Galvan in terms of brain power. Notably, they don't speak by vocalizing, but instead they project their thoughts telepathically to communicate. Also, unlike the Galvan, who are basically just brain and aren't the best in combat, Cerebros are perfectly capable of defending themselves, thanks to the fact that they can open their heads to expose their brain, which can then shoot out bolts of electricity. They can either zap things, or they can use it for electromagnetism to carry around metallic objects. So yeah, the very capable brainiac crab species. Arachnochimps are a monkey-like species of 6 limbs and 4 eyes. The best way to describe them is that, imagine if Spider-Man was a monkey. They're very agile, can shoot webs from their tails, and they're pretty jokey in combat. So basically Spider-Man, but as a monkey. When ultimized, they become more gorilla-like. They lose their agility, but more than make up for it by becoming a lot stronger, and their web shooter moves from their tail to their mouth, giving them far better accuracy than normal. So yeah, they're not monkeying around. Polymorphs are a slime-based species. Like most blob creatures, they're indestructible, being able to take physical blows without even feeling a thing. They can wrap themselves around foes to constrain them, and they're capable of adjusting their pH level to become acidic to deliver deadly burns to their foes. However, one downside they have is that because their planet has very light gravity, on other planets they're just a puddle. So to maintain their shape, they require some sort of anti-gravity projection. But like all slime creatures, they're very hard to kill, so you're not getting rid of them that easily. The Incursion are a group of frog-like creatures. They have long prehensile tongues, but they also have sensitive noses, making them very weak to foul-smelling things. The Incursion's home planet was destroyed millennia ago after a well-meaning attempt to stop a civil war led to the planet blowing up. So now they're a nomadic species that's constantly looking for more worlds to conquer and add to their empire. And they have all sorts of weaponry to back them up, most deadly one being their planet destruction beam, which is exactly as powerful as it sounds. And it moves faster than light, too. They once fired a ray from Earth to Pluto, and it arrived in mere seconds. So yeah, very deadly people to encounter. The one thing to note is that there wasn't an Incursion transformation until after Alien Force, but since the species was introduced here, I'm talking about them here. Now, here we have Celestial Sapiens, easily the most powerful known beings in the Ben 10 universe. Actually, that's kind of inaccurate, because they're not even from the universe. Rather, they're born in a realm outside the multiverse known as the Forge of Creation, and these guys are not to be treated lightly. Their power is that they can reshape anything to their liking. They can reverse time, create objects out of nothing, erase things from existence, and even create entire universes. This might sound very OP, and they are, but they have one major drawback. They're very indecisive. You see, inside a Celestial Sapien's head are multiple personalities, and for them to do anything, at least two of the personalities have to agree to it. And when I say anything, I mean they can't even move without agreeing to do so. Also, it's been shown they have a pretty big legal system, as there are certain things they can do that'll get them in trouble with others of their kind. So yeah, very powerful, but thankfully they're pretty indecisive. Biotsavartans are a magnetic species. They have the ability to shoot out magnetic beams that can draw on any metallic object to them, and because of their magnetic body, they are hard to kill, as if they're destroyed, they can just reassemble themselves. They can also float and can create electromagnetic shields, so that's pretty cool, I guess. Apoplexians are anthropomorphic tiger-like aliens. They're very strong and they have a large claw in their knuckles that they can extend out. They're also super tough, being able to withstand laser blasts at point-blank range without a scratch. This might seem like a good deal, but then we come to their biggest drawback. Their temperament. They're a very angry species that takes everything as a challenge to fight, and they beat up anything that bothers them, including inanimate objects. They're also not very intelligent, so they often pick fights with far more powerful beings, leading to their defeat. Also, they have a high sense of shame, so they wear clothes and get embarrassed if they get caught naked. That's a thing. And when ultimized, they gain more claws. Cool. Alright, now this guy requires some background. In Ben 10, there's a group of nanomechanical organisms known as the nanochips. They can shapeshift into other forms, and they serve their queen dutifully. The Omnitrix ended up scanning them, and it created a brand new organism that was a hybrid between human and nanochip, creating the unique being known as Nanomech. He's a tiny mechanical being who's capable of shrinking down even further, and he can shoot electrical beams. This makes him a hard foe to fight, as he can't see him and he can shrink down as much as he wants, and he can shrink down so much that he can become microscopic, meaning he could easily enter your body and mess you up. So yeah, his small size is his strength. So that's all the Alien Force transformation species, but like last time, let's look at some notable guys that didn't get a transformation. First off, there's the Hybrid, huge white creatures, with wings, super strength, and the ability to shoot their fingertips as a needle barrage attack. However, they don't do so well in the heat and will shrivel up if deprived of water or cold temperatures for too long. The Hybrid are a very racist species, believing that all life in the universe is beneath them, and they want to wipe them out to prove they're the best. At least that's what they tell people. In truth, they were so obsessed with purity that they ended up becoming inbred, and therefore sterile, meaning this will be the last generation of them. They were so appalled at the idea of lesser beings outliving them, that they decided that if they're going down, they're taking everybody with them. Then there's the Vreedle, an artificial species created by an unknown scientist. They ended up creating their own family, and now they spend all their time doing crimes. They're a very unintelligent bunch, but they're still pretty feared due to their stubbornness and the fact that when they die, they just get cloned. So, they're like a bad itch you can't get rid of. Then finally, Anodites, energy-based beings who have control of an essence known as mana, which is basically the life force of all living things. They can manipulate this energy to their liking, and they're very good at using magic, making them a force to be reckoned with. After Alien Force came out, we got Ultimate Alien, which was really just DLC for Alien Force, so most fans just talk about the two like they're the same show. But since the creators consider it different, I guess I have to as well. But we're not here to talk about that, we want to see some aliens, let's get to them. Oricians are a bipedal mollusk-like creature. They have the ability to absorb oxygen and hydrogen atoms from the air and convert it to water, which they can fire out in high-pressurized bursts from the holes in their hands. They can also absorb steam and convert it to water, and their armor is super durable, making them very hard to face in combat. Because of their design, you might think they come from a planet that's a big ocean or something. But no, their planet's described as being mostly desert, and because of their ability to make water, other species on the planet worship them like gods. So that's definitely interesting to note. Geoshalone Arios, also known as Aldobrans, which I'm going to call them because that first name is a mouthful, are turtle-like creatures. They have the power to convert their limbs into what are basically fan blades, allowing them to make strong bursts of wind, which they can also use to fly. They're also immune to mana-based attacks. Aldobrans are very peaceful. They basically have no concept of things like crime or even lying. Instead, they just spend all day eating grass, basking in the sun, and discussing philosophy. So they're a very chill species. Prepatosian bees are an energy-based species, and this energy is atomic. A long time ago, their planet was a marvel of technology. Then atomic war broke out, radiating the surface of the planet. Some of the population went underground to avoid it, and they became known as the A subspecies, while others stayed on the surface and evolved around the radiation, becoming one with the energy. And these guys are the bees. They have the ability to fly, they're incredibly hot, and in general, they're very dangerous to be around since, well, they're literally living radiation. Luckily though, they can be sealed in a lead-based suit that blocks their radioactive body but still allows them to shoot atomic lasers and heat up their body to cause burns. They also can't eat or fly in these suits, so they're used as punishments from what I can gather. So yeah, radioactive guys. Talpadians are large mechanical armadillo-esque creatures. They're able to turn their hands into drills, allowing them to move through the ground like it was water, and they can use their shoulder pistons to create earthquakes. So yeah, mechanical armadillos. Very tough guys who shouldn't be messed with, unless you want to come face to face with a drill. Amperi are jellyfish-like creatures. Thanks to their planet basically being nothing but electromagnetic gases, they have developed electrical powers that are extremely powerful. They have the typical shooting bolts power, but they can also travel through wires, turn intangible, read thoughts by reading the electric currents in the brain, absorb and redirect energy. Yeah, they're like master electricians. Citricaia are humanoid cheetah-esque creatures. They have super speed. Now you might be thinking, what makes them different from Kinnocelerans? The answer is yes. Chronosapiens are a mechanical clockwork species. A Chronosapien's power is the ability to control time. They can slow down or speed it up, shoot beams that instantly age things to dust, show projections of the past, and even travel through it if they train themselves hard enough. But their main drawback is that they're pretty slow. If you sneak up on them, you can get the advantage, and plus, being a mechanical species, they're weak to things like EMPs or magnets. But still, time powers, so it makes up for that. Melanosapiens are a lizard-like species with 3 eyes corresponding to the RGB color system. Though this has never been explained in the show, it's a popular fan theory that they represent different types of vision, like thermal or X-ray. But, like I said, this is just a headcanon, so take that with a grain of salt. A melanosapien can become completely invisible, and they have a retractable stinger of some sort in their tail, though what it does exactly has never been revealed. Though it's presumably venom injector of some sort, since that's what most stingers are. Their home planet is invisible and sadly was taken over by a dictator some time ago, so not a very happy place. Orictinies are beetle-like creatures. They can eat a lot of food and convert it into an energy attack that they can fire. Hey, wait a minute! Planchiculi are gremlin-like creatures. Because their planet is full of scraps, they have evolved to be great mechanics. They can basically take anything and turn it into something else. Though unfortunately, the things they build aren't the most structurally sound and tend to break very easily. Also, they have a very hard time controlling themselves as their instinct to build and destroy is so strong that they can't help themselves whenever there's machinery around, dismantling pretty much everything they come across for parts. So yeah, Grim aliens. Gimlinopithecus are a Sasquatch-like species. They have static fur that allows them to fire bolts of electricity. Okay, why is this such a common power? Were the writers really struggling for ideas that much? They also have super strength, but that's hardly unique either. Anyway, their home planet is dangerous to be on during the day. A solar wind bombards the day part of the planet with solar radiation. Luckily, though, their planet has a very slow rotation, so they can avoid this by just staying between the day and night areas. And their fur and electric powers help them survive the planet's harsh conditions. And with that, we leave Ultimate Alien. There really weren't any notable species introduced here that didn't have a transformation, so let's move on to the last classic series, Omniverse, which introduced a bunch of new aliens, so we're gonna be here for a while. Though probably not, since some of these guys don't even have names. So that's lovely. Conductoids are wire-like creatures. They're not from a planet, but rather a nebula, where they float around and feed on the energy given off by the space cloud. Males are negatively charged, while females are positive charged. And yeah, they're another electric guy, but they also have the power to absorb energy and send it back as a powerful attack. Even being able to absorb the energy of a Big Bang. So that's pretty dang strong. Still, another electric guy, please come up with something new. Segmentosapiens are creatures that look like a gorilla made of Lego. Yes, Lego. They can reshape themselves into many different forms and can use their Lego brick body to build constructs out of whatever they want, and they're made of Lego. Lego! Apparently in this universe, there's just a planet inhabited by Lego. Lego! I'm moving on. I just can't. Galilians are a rocky creature. They come from the orbit of the planet Kepler, but they don't actually live there. Instead, they're basically their own planet. A Galilian's main power is the ability to control gravity. They can raise or lower the gravity of any object, basically making them telekinetic. They can launch you into the stratosphere or crush you under your own weight. And they can curl into a ball to become even larger and even more gravitational based. What? However, they have to be careful. If they exert their gravity too much, they can create a black hole, and they can't undo that. Now, despite their impressive power, Galilians are said to be very wise and patient, which I guess makes sense. If you just spent your time floating through space, you'd probably have to be a very patient, I guess. So, yeah. Orthopterans are a grasshopper-like species. They have large, powerful legs, making them able to leap large distances in a single bound. The legs can also be used to deliver powerful kicks, and the shock from the landing creates miniature shockwaves. Also, their heads are as hard as steel and very shock-absorbent, so they can deliver pretty nasty headbutts too. So yeah, these are pretty tough bugs. This insectoid species doesn't have a name, so that's great. They have the power to make balls of plasma that they are able to ride on top of, and then gather debris to make the sphere larger. They can then launch the sphere at their enemies. These guys were originally a cleanup crew for the planet Atrosh Zero, but the main inhabitants were just so messy that they made the entire planet uninhabitable. Ain't that a kick in the head? Ichthyparambuloids, also known as walkatrouts, are fish with legs. Yes. Their power is that they're slippery, and they can walk a long time without getting tired. Yes. Yes, really. Nemoina are fairy-like creatures. They can fly with their wings, and, most importantly, they can release a dust from their fingertip that anything exposed to will instantly fall asleep, upon which they can enter their dreams and alter it, which allows them to gain information from their subject, acting as a form of interrogation. Because of this ability, they're a pretty feared species since it's very hard to hide things from them. So yeah, the sleepy pixies. These mole-like creatures have large mustaches, and these mustaches are prehensile, being able to lift things, and they can be formed in a fist for combat. They can even whirl them around like a helicopter blade, allowing them to fly. But yeah, that's a thing. Atrocians are glob-like creatures. Their habits are incredibly filthy. They made their entire planet uninhabitable. These guys are not built for combat. Those claws are pretty dull, and they're very weak. The only advantage they have is that they're indestructible, being able to withstand punches from species even with super strength, and their skin is very hard to pierce. This might sound good, but they're not immune to pain, so they feel every single blow thrown to them. So yeah, they're kind of the worst. These bird-like creatures look like large anthropomorphic chickens, with large spikes on their elbows. They're said to be good at hand-to-hand combat, but other than that, I can't really think of anything noteworthy about them. These ugly-looking guys are always wearing a head covering of some sort. This is because their face is considered an unknowable horror, and anything that sees it will be scared silly. But other than that, they don't have any sort of combat abilities, they're just scary. Now, eldritchly scary, but still, they're just scary. Turbosarians come from the same planet as Vaxosarians. These pterosaur-esque aliens are capable of flying thanks to their jetpack, which allows them to move at super fast speeds. They can also create energy constructs of their body like whips or lasers. Not much else to say here. You'll be hearing that a lot. These robotic figures are a very powerful species. Basically every attack they do is imbued with nuclear energy, making them as strong as an atom bomb. They can create nuclear blasts, create artificial suns, increase their body heat to melt or burn things, and in general, they're said to be one of the most powerful creatures in the universe. Now, despite the species being unnamed, a popular fan theory is that they're the Pripetosian A's, since after all, we have Pripetosian B's, and they're both atomic creatures, so it makes sense if you think about it. These rocky creatures' stomach is a walking chemical lab, as they have basically everything you can think of in there, and they're capable of combining these chemicals together and releasing them in a gaseous substance to fight. With it being said, they can release basically any sort of gaseous substance you can think of, and as a bonus, they themselves are immune to gas and powder-based attacks, including a Nemoina sleep dust, making them both a chemical lab and a sentient gas mask. Vladats are walking bat-like creatures. They have a bunch of abilities associated with vampires of folklore. They can fly, they get their substance from blood, and they can hypnotize people. And, rather notably, they can shoot at a projectile creature known as a Corruptora, which when attached to a living thing makes them like a puppet to the Vladat. Vladats once enslaved the Transilians many years ago, but they got overthrown thanks to the Transilians weaponizing their biggest weakness, sunlight. Yep, just like a vampire, Vladats are extremely weak to sunlight, so the Transilians created guns that shot out flames from a star to exterminate their captors, driving the Vladats to extinction. Although eventually their ruler was resurrected, but he was defeated. Now before we get to the untransformed species, this series introduced predator species of some of the Omnitrix aliens, so let's look at them. First off, there's crab dozers, the predator of pyronites. Their rocky skin makes them fireproof, and their saliva is an extinguisher, allowing them to eat the firemen. Then there's bug lizards, the predator of lepidopterans. They can't fly, but they can jump high enough to keep up with the winged insects, and they can release a gas from their mouth that melts a lepidopteran's sticky slime, making trapping them not an option. Mucilator is the predator of orthopterans. They're covered in sticky sacs that trap the grasshopper aliens if they try to jump towards them. Slamoids are the predator of Talpadians, and they can burrow just as fast as them. Their skin is hard to pierce with their drills, and they can grab the armored creature and slam them around until I guess they break. Pterorantula is a spider-like species and the predator of the unnamed insect species. They can make plasma webbing that blocks out the plasma balls of their prey. Chaos Effects Ultimasaurus are a dinosaur species and the predator of Vaxosarians. They're heavier than what a Vaxosarian can lift, and they can shoot a webbing from the horn on their head to entrap their prey. Psycholeopterans are a wasp-like species and the predator of Necrophrygians. Like them, they can become intangible, but their main advantage is that they release a gas from themselves that when combined with their rapid wing beats, creates a hypnotic display that lure in Necrophrygians, and then they grasp them with their long tongue. Omnivoracious is a large bird-like creature and the predator of the Galvan. They're very intelligent, so Galvan can't outsmart them, and they can chase them down so they can eat them. Thankfully for the Galvan, the species ended up getting wiped out by a meteor, causing a climate change they couldn't adapt to, causing their extinction. Vicetopus is an octopus-like species and the predator of cerebrocrustaceans. They're immune to electricity, and they can squeeze the crab guys until they break, allowing them to get to the fleshy insides. And finally, Panuncians are a Smilodon-like species and the predator of Splixins. Like them, they can multiply, allowing them to keep up with the duplicating prey. Okay, now let's look at the notable species that didn't get transformations of some sort. First, there's Ravanaganders. These vaguely feline aliens don't have any special powers, though they are pretty good at hand-to-hand combat. They spend most of their day farming. When they're young, they have a tail which falls off during puberty, and when this happens, they're given a name. As before this happens, all young ones are called just that, young one. Also, they consider contractions swear words, so in casual conversation they say things like will not or was not instead of won't or wasn't. The Kraho are a group of humanoid creatures that vaguely resemble deer, I guess. They have stretchy powers, and they're shown to be pretty strong, but because their home planet is very hot, they're pretty sensitive to the cold. Slimebiots are slimy creatures and the first creatures to exist in the universe. They're the creators of all DNA, and therefore the ancestor of all life. They also eat DNA, and they have the ability to grow extra limbs out of whatever they're attached to. So, basically, if they're attached to you, they can spawn extra limbs of you from them. It's weird to explain. And to end this section off, we find the Contumalia. Fifth-dimensional beings whose true form is incomprehensible to third-dimensional beings, and as such, you perceive them as a form similar to whatever is closest to your heart. They travel around the multiverse, dropping devices known as Anilargs, which are capable of creating universes where there are none. But if one is activated in a space where there's already a universe, then the current universe will be completely wiped out. Now, despite that, the Contumalia mean no harm, or really anything. They're merely observers to everything, and they never enforce their will on anything, preferring to see how things play out by themselves. And the last thing we'll look at today is the reboot, but most of the aliens are just recycled over from the original, though we still got a few new guys, so let's look at them. Caskins are a mechanical species. They have a strong exoskeleton that's hard to break, and they can shoot pressurized blasts of water. Why am I getting deja vu? The Fulmini are electric rock creatures. They have the typical electricity powers, but they can also use their electricity to form constructs to use as weapons. They can create barriers, absorb energy, and they can use their electricity as a form of telekinesis. Like the incursions of the classic series, the Fulmini's planet got destroyed, making them a nomadic species constantly looking for places to conquer, to expand their empire. Ecoplectoids are small green creatures. If you hit them on the back, they end up duplicating. These clones are smaller than the original, but they end up getting denser and stronger each time they split apart. And like Sonorosians, the clones can get hurt without it affecting the others. And finally, the Zurge, a hive mind species that's capable of taking control of others of their species. And when they do this, they're able to form into massive constructs. But when they're by themselves, they can't really do anything. And with that, that's all the most notable aliens in the Ben 10 franchise. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you are now enlightened to the existence of this franchise. That was my main hope when making this video. Goodbye, everybody.